Cal Solar Power Data Center project. This is something that has been at the city for 6, 7 years now. We've gone through 2 previous development rights agreements.
Glenn, excuse me. Are we not going to record this, Melissa?
Yeah, we're recording this.
Okay.
Yes, it's being recorded and it's live streaming right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if we have less than 4 members of council, then this is not a meeting. But if 4 members showed up and I didn't want to tell a single council member no, as a result, then we have posted this, we have an agenda, and then we would need minutes. So we are recording. If you will.
Mr. Gambit, can you please get closer to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Kind of hard for me to talk to the audience and be right by the mic, but I'll try. Again, this project has been here for 6, 7 years. This is now coming in front of council for a 3rd version of a development rights agreement. But in this period of time, obviously, there's been a turnover on staff. We have new council members, and for some people, this is brand new. As a result, Ron Pickett is here. He's the principal behind this project to, if you will, tell us what the project's about and answer any questions anyone has about it. And I'll turn this over to Ron. Yeah. Or here's the mic. This works.
Thank you, Glenn. Glenn is correct. This has been, I think, the first time I appeared before the council. I still had black hair. So this has been quite an adventure and a lot of work. And projects of this size do encounter a lot of things along the way. The Solar Wind Energy Tower, and by the way, that company would now change the name. The new name is Kenergy, but it's still a solar wind energy tower. The tower is a tall structure. The location for the proposed location is out on Avenue D and 25th Street and 4th Street, between 4th and 5th. And it's a 1 section, 1 mile by 1 mile square. The tower is proposed to be located, and we had a site plan we introduced 2 weeks ago to the session, dead center of this 1 mile square. And by being dead center of the 1 mile square, nothing emits from the tower. We're going to make some cold, damp air. By being in that location, nothing will transmit outside the tower, and there's no noise detectable above, I think it's 65 or 70 dB from anything outside the property. We've been through that in different hearings, but just to refresh and go over it for those who weren't involved in that before, that's the situation. The tower takes advantage of a resource that you have here, which is hot, dry air, and that's the secret to this. So this area, Yuma area, is the hottest and driest place in the United States. So by doing that, when we build this tower, at the top of the tower, we have abundant, unlimited hot, dry air. And the secret to the tower's success will be we introduce near the top of the tower certain sized droplets of water across the top. It's like much like a misting system. It's identical to a misting system that you see in some restaurants and places like that here and all over Arizona. The hot, dry air immediately absorbs the water. It can't help but do that. Right now, at this moment, it's 102 degrees here, and your relative humidity is 8%. I just checked as we were coming in. In those conditions, here at this late in the afternoon, the tower would be producing its maximum capability. There's a secret to, not a secret to, but there's a reverse engineering to the design. So you don't build the tower to capture the maximum that you could ever catch. You build it, you kind of reverse engineer to see what's the cost of this versus the cost of selling the electricity versus the size of the components that you need, so you don't have things sitting around not working all the time. you have to find a kind of a medium area where it'll produce. So here's a great example. It's May 18th, 19th, whatever it is, and at this time in the afternoon or evening, that tower is producing as much as we can possibly handle for its full design capacity. Its design capacity is 1,950 megawatts. Based on the studies that we did and analyzing the water and the air conditions here, the tower will produce about 5.9 million megawatt hours a year. Now, it's probably a foreign number to most people, but that's roughly 50% more than the Hoover Dam currently produces. So it's a massive amount of electricity, and it's doing nothing but using hot air and water. This water, as soon as the air absorbs the water, it starts to evaporate. As air evaporates, it cools. Cold air is heavier, cold air falls. So we create a downdraft inside the tower, and it's measurable and totally predictable. And about 2/3 of the way down the tower, we hit an inflection point where the evaporation process is complete. And then the cold, damp air starts to compress. And at the bottom of the tower, there are tunnels, and the tunnels then allow the air to be compressed into the tunnels and forced through the tunnels. And in the tunnels, we have a series of turbines, 3-bladed turbines, and those turbines spin, and they collect the energy, and they harness the energy from the wind. And we have patents on the tower, patents on the wind collection, patents on hydraulic drive system, patents on where the tunnels are and how they're located. All of these things have taken years to put this together on this one site. So at the end of the day, we've got generating rooms between the tunnels. The generators are producing, they're very simple, standard off-the-shelf generators. They're sitting in the room, spinning, creating electricity, straight use for the grid. It's not like a typical solar facility or wind facility where you have direct current and you have to use inverters to put it back on the grid. This is grid-ready electricity. So the issue that, one of the things that has stalled the project for the last couple of years is that the amount of electricity we're producing is more than this particular area can use. So from day one, we designed the power to go to California. And so we worked with the California Energy Commission, and the California Energy Commission has given us a pre-certification last year for the 1,950 megawatts of power. So that's an expensive proposition to get it there, and we've been working with lots of different resources to create a situation where we would trigger the available financing that we need to build the tower. That financing is based on power purchase agreements. So we need long-term, reliable people or companies to buy the electricity. And then you use that as a mechanism for financing, guaranteeing the financing for the tower. We've got a group it's a green bond group that is ready, willing, and able to finance the tower, subject to getting the power purchase agreements. So then you get kind of into a chicken or the egg. You go to the big utilities out in California, and they say, well, when's the tower going to be built? 3.5, 4 years. Well, how do we know it's going to be built? Well, give us the power purchase agreement, and we'll get the financing, and we'll build it. It's a chicken or the egg kind of thing, and it's been plaguing the project. It's what's held us up, and it's why we're not under construction right now. So the breakthrough came about this time last year when we were discussing with we were approached actually by a group and said, could we co-locate a data center on the site, and could you sell us your green power to power the data center? Honestly, a year ago, I didn't know anything about data centers. I mean, nothing. I knew that we had them. I didn't know how they functioned. It just was news to me. I found out that data centers consume a tremendous amount of electricity, and wherever you locate a data center depends on a couple of things. You have to have water for the cooling towers. You have to have bandwidth to supply the internet to the data center. And you have to have reliable energy. get too complicated, but if you put a data center in Southern California, it's going to cost you 11 cents a kilowatt hour for the power that they need. If you put a data center in Herndon, Virginia, outside Washington, D.C., where most of the data centers are located, the cost of electricity is 5.8 cents a kilowatt hour. Phoenix has become a new data center magnet, if you will. And APS has negotiated with these big data centers and chip manufacturers rates of 6.25 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, a lot of the cost of electricity is transmission, getting from here to there, what do you do on the downtimes? And Arizona is what's called a regulated state. That means in Arizona, if you make electricity, you have to sell it to the utility company. Arizona, until last year, was not buying any green electricity or any renewables. They didn't have an appetite for that. So that's why we were always going to California. Well, that all changed last year. So APS is now interested in renewables. They've closed a couple of their coal plants, and there is a market here. And we're discussing with APS right now. We're in constant discussions with them about renewable energy from the tower to support Arizona as well. So back to the data center. We were approached by a data center development company, and we found out that if we co-locate the data center on our property, we can sell electricity direct to the data center. And when we do that, the data center gets absolute credit for green electricity, renewable electricity, and we bypass all the fees and cost it takes to circulate it wherever into the system. So we have promised them a rate that is better than the rate in Phoenix, and it's sufficient to give us what we need to trigger the financing for the tower. And it's just a solution. It's what we've been working for, and it came about, but it's taken a long time since, it's taken another year to develop this and get the data center designed, figure out how much electricity they needed, what we could do, have it blended into our program. The data center can never be out of electricity for a nanosecond, zero. So in order to support the data center, you have to have a backup system. Every single data center in the world has a 100% redundancy backup system, at least one backup system. So they can, if the grid goes down or the utility company goes down, they flip on their generating system and they don't go down. So working all this out in conjunction with the tower, supplying them the green power, the backup power, the water they need, has led us to the reapproaching the city about a month or two ago, something like that, and saying this is where we are, this has been the breakthrough, this is what's going to get the tower done, and but we need some more water than we originally had, because number one, the tower produces more energy than we thought, so therefore we need more water to make that energy, and number two, we need water for the data center. So we've done all the calculations and reverse engineered that, and it came to the application that we filed to, I'm not sure what we call it, but requests that we filed to amend or revise the development agreement and put that amount of water that we need in to accommodate the data center and the tower. Now, the economics. The tower cost about $1.5 billion. That does include financing, so that's soft cost included. It does have a contingency in it right now. Right now, it looks like it will employ about 300 full-time people. During construction, which is 2.5 years, we will have up to 2,000 employees on site building the tower. It's a massive structure with a lot of people and a lot of jobs, and we will be hiring locally for a lot of those jobs. It requires local help to do that. Some of the help comes in from all over the world because of the type of structure and the engineering that it takes for it. But we're pouring a lot of concrete, and we need a lot of labor, and it takes a lot of people to build this thing. The data center is a quicker development project is about 15 months, but it's going to be $1.2 billion just for the data center, and 1,000 construction jobs, and about 120 to 130 employees full-time once it's operational. And the level of full-time pay for the data center employees is about 30% higher than the employees of the tower. So the payrolls, I think the combined payrolls, I did this for Jenny, is about $17 million a year, something like that. On the water side, the proposal that we agreed to before, and now by increasing the size of the water, is for us to pay for the wells and what it takes to get the water, and then we buy the water from the city. So I think it's about a little over, it's like almost $4 million a year of income to the city off the water, and there's no capital cost for the city at all, and the operational cost is whatever people they have to kind of watch the pumps and read the meters or whatever. It's in conjunction with the regular water supply system that you have now. It's just augmented by additional wells. So the infrastructure that is necessary, the streets and the roads, to accommodate both construction and permanent, we pay for all of that. The city doesn't come out of its pocket for that at all. And I'm looking forward to building this and looking forward to bringing this to San Luis, and I hope that we still have the support of the city for this project. And Glenn asked me to come down and take questions, and that's what I'm here. Any questions at all? If I can answer them, I will. If not, I'll get the answers to you later.
I think we can start with the department heads, and then
Sure.
we'll go on. Jenny, you have the list? Come on up.
Hi, Ron. How are you? All right. I know just for the record, Jenny Torres, Economic Development. I kind of took a look at the last questions we had from 7 years ago, and I want to try to revisit a few of them because I know that, the project has changed. So bear with me with the questions. So the first one is, can you provide us with an update on the financing options that you're working on and their timeframes? You did mention that part of the financing will be coming from the data center, but I'm also assuming that you're still trying to work to purchase power agreements from California utility companies.
Yes, thank you for that. Jenny, we are in a position now, once we close the data center deal, if it holds on the terms that we think we have, that will be sufficient for us to build the tower. The data center construction is paid for by the data center group. We're just leasing them the land and providing the electricity and the water. So that's all part of our lease agreement to them. So the $1.2 billion they need, frankly, the companies, we have 3 that are in the mix on this, they don't need to worry about financing. That's a given. Their contract to buy the power from us gives us the financing for the tower. Everybody understands this from the deal. The group that we have for the financing is headed up by a green bond fund. These are fairly new. Didn't have them 2 years ago. This is brand new financing. It's done by a consortium of banks that are interested in making the world greener, and so they have allocated a portion of their funds to these bond management companies to create the liquidity to build facilities that are carbon neutral or zero carbon. That's all they do, is zero carbon. So we were approached in November by someone that I met 5 years ago on the tower when we were looking for financing, on traditional financing. And that gentleman had left that bank and is now heading up this green bond fund. And they have the resources, and we are under we're under an NDA, but we still have a memo of understanding on the financing to come from them. They are a part of a European consortium of green bond funds that currently have $1 trillion in cash set aside for green projects. I mean, it's in Europe or here or wherever. This is, I think the United States is frankly a little bit behind in terms of the emergency of, carbon CO2 emissions. Europe's way ahead of us, and these are European funds.
So just for the record, you're not going to go after power purchase agreements from anybody else?
No.
Or are you just going to focus on the data center investor financing?
We're going to have other power purchase agreements, but we don't need them for the financing. I'm in discussions with APS. I'm in discussions with Mexico. I'm in discussions with, we've had a few discussions with California, but we're not going to go to California until we have the rest of the base done. We know the tower is going to be built. We can give them a date certain, see what they want and what they're going to pay for it. And I'm hoping that Arizona will take up more of the power.
All right. Can you provide an update on the need to create this KINGR Global Solutions and the status of the solar wind energy tower, which was SWET? My understanding is that SWET is you're saying, based on your presentation, you stated that that's still part of the company, but based on what I saw, there's no investor shares anymore. I'm wondering if those shares got transferred to this Global Solution?
Thank you. I'm sorry for the confusion there.
Sorry.
Solar Wind Energy Tower, Inc., is the parent company. It has changed its name to Kenergy. The shareholders are all the same. There are some new shareholders in it because we raised a bunch of money to get us to this point, but it's the same company. Solar Wind Energy, Inc. was the operating company for Solar Wind Energy Towers. That's the company that was doing things, does payroll and contracts and things like that. We changed the name of that to Kenergy Global Solutions, Inc. So there's no change in ownership, there's no change in management. We've added management, we've brought new people on, but the company is the same, and we're in the process of doing an IPO with Kenergy right now.
All right. What advances have you made in the past 7 years in obtaining clearances from FAA, EPA, and DOD?
Okay, I've met with DOD and EPA. We've met with just about everybody over the years. We don't, the EPA, we really have no issues with the EPA. We do not need any permits from the EPA. The backup generating system for the data center, once we get to the full design on that, you program the number of hours a year that that system is supposed to run. And then you measure the tons of CO2 that are emitted to create that. And if you hit a certain threshold, then you need a permit. If you stay under that threshold, you don't need a permit. Now, that threshold depends on what you're using, diesel generators, using gas. Today we have possibility of some other forms of clean energy. So I don't anticipate that we'll hit that threshold, but that's where that would come into play. Now, the FAA, we completed a full report. We just had it completely updated 4 months ago. We are ready to submit on that. We think that in our consultants, Williams Aviation, on that brand new report, redone again, we think that there should be no objections to that.
And DOD?
DOD, we have no objections from DOD with anything that we're doing here at all. We never have. Actually, it was DOD who sent us here. The DOD, I was in meetings in the Pentagon when Liam Panetta was secretary, and I forget the name of the colonel who was his advisor for green stuff, but at any rate, we were looking to put the tower on the Berry Goldwater Range, and we were hitting issues with the economics of it. The Department of Defense, we were going to sell power to them, and they were going to, it's called swaptions. They're going to take this power and then swap it for other sites that they had around the country where they had higher rates. That became so complicated that we found out that the Department of Defense has, in its charter, it cannot make any money. And so, and this sounds kind of crazy, but we don't allow our Department of Defense to make any money. So by giving them this low-cost electricity and them offsetting their higher cost, there was a possibility that they were creating an income. So they set up a committee with Secretary of Commerce put somebody on, Secretary of Treasury, and Secretary of Defense. So when they set up this committee, we had the first meeting. I get called by the administrator, and he said, Ron, there's a great little city right next to us that has the same air that we have and the same resources we have. And why don't you see if you can go do a tower there? And of course, if we want some power, you'll sell it to us, of course. So there was no issue with DOD. That's where we were.
Just to follow up on the FAA, so do you need a permit for them in terms of the height
Yes,
restrictions?
yeah, we need a permit from the FAA, and we're prepared to file for that.
All right. What advances have you made in the past 7 years in contacting MCAS, YPG, airport regarding the impacts of flight emissions, military testing, or noise control?
We have not been back to them since our last meeting, which was a couple of years ago. We have done the updated FAA report since then. We will obviously resubmit that to them, and they'll be commenting. When we file for the FAA, they'll have comments on that, I'm sure. I can tell you the bottom line if y'all want to know what it is. The flight patterns on one of the, there's 18 approaches to the airport. On one of the approaches, we're going in, landing or taking off. We fall within 1.5 miles of the vector. So we're outside. No plane's supposed to be where we are. We're 1.5 miles from that. Of course, we're 1.25 miles from the border. You're not supposed to be down at the border either. But let's suppose somebody gets confused. Well, how do they get confused? If the airport is socked in, which means it's fogged in, you have zero visibility. And if both of the radar systems are malfunctioning, then we have to, because that could happen, I don't know that it ever has happened, because that could happen, then we've got to change the approach on one of these 18 approaches to where the plane will have to be a certain number of feet higher when it passes the tower. Now, even on a C-130, which is the biggest heavy we have coming in there, they can still get down in time and still take off in time and abide by that. But they will have to change their approach rules. So they'll have to say, when it's called IFR and VFR. So VFR is visual, IFR is instruments. So if it's instruments only and both radars are down, they have to come in, I think it's 800 feet. I forget exactly how much higher they have to come in. This should not be an issue.
Okay. Can you disclose the option to purchase the land and timeframes?
The time frame right now, we can extend settlement until June 30th of 2022. We just redid that within the last October. I think we did an extension, and within the last few months we've extended that again. So that's solid, yeah. So
So you got till June.
got to June of 22, and I would think that the sellers, if we're close or something, need a month or something. I don't think that's but that's our target. Is that time frame?
One of the questions last time was, what are the status of the development of similar towers in other countries? I remember you were working in different countries to be able to put something similar. And I think it was in Mexico, Chile, and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Jenny, the San Luis, Mexico has wanted a tower since we started talking here, and it would still be subject to CFE. And I told them we were not going to go any further with that until we resolve what was happening here. So this is my first choice. This is the show place we want. We've got years of frankly, you know, my wife's here tonight, we've got years where we've been down here and watched the families play soccer and pay their electric bills and water bills right here. And we want this tower to come here. As long as San Luis wants it here, it's a primary focus for us to get this first tower here. We're far enough along, we can make it now. Now, in terms of other countries, we have a memo of understanding that is ready for signature that will involve our licensing of the tower to another whole country, which will have multiple towers in it. They are actually joining us in the Arizona project, because what we learn and get finalizing here will work into their MOU to make this successful in the future towers. We still have a project potential. It's not our project, but there's a group in Kenya that wants this tower, but they've not been able to get their financing lined up. I've had hours of discussions with the Saudi Electric Company. I met with the ambassador from Saudi Arabia. We've had many discussions with them. Most recently, we talked with representatives from the United Arab Emirates. Everybody wants to see this. They want to see us get this model closed, the financing closed here. They want to see, everybody loves the fact that we're co-locating a data center here is very interesting. It works in a lot of other cities and areas, but not only a data center, we can co-locate a steel mill. Steel mills are the dirtiest things we have, you know, they're mostly coal-fired. So we can make electric arc furnace steel mills with the price of our electricity and do this in other countries. It's not just a data center. It's co-locating this main user, which offsets the cost of the tower, gets the financing in place, which lets all of this electricity and other things happen alongside the tower. There are other co-locators that don't need electricity 24/7, like a data center. A steel mill, electric arc furnace steel mill, even a smelter for iron ore, they can turn them on and turn them off. They can run them in the afternoons when you have plenty of power and turn them off at night when you don't have as much. That's all, they work great on that. So there's lots of opportunities for that. So the opportunity a year and a half ago was just to build a tower and sell electricity. Now it's to build a tower, co-locate an industrial user, give them green power that's economical, makes the tower economical, and then supplies abundant electricity for other resources and other uses at the same time. All you have to have is the natural resource of hot air and the water.
So just to clarify, there's no other similar technology or another solar tower anywhere
No,
in the nation?
no. And people get us confused with concentrated solar, which is a big tower where they have these reflections where they, you know, they reflect the light from the sun up to heat and boil water and spin a generator. But that's not us at all. That's concentrated solar, has nothing to do, nothing like us at all.
The other question I think you answered is who will be the off-taker of the generated power for this specific tower? I think you mentioned the data center and that you're looking potentially at other power purchase agreement if there's an opportunity, correct?
And I think there's quite possibly some other off-takers who might co-locate and bring some more industry here to San Luis on the site. We've got plenty of land there. And these would be co-locators who can turn on and turn off their facility. Because the data center at 24/7, 365, at 200 megawatts, I'm maxed out. I can't do another 24/7. I got to give them in our peak hours.
This other one, it's the power purchase agreements, which you already mentioned. But this one, it kind of goes in the same lines. If you're going to transfer this power, I guess the question was if the grid will be through APS and what's the status of these negotiations? And I think you already mentioned that you're working with them already?
We're working with them. We've been working with them for several months now. You know, the greater Yuma area, only the total capacity for Yuma, greater Yuma, is about 400 to 450 megawatts. I mean, that's on your max hour, that's what you use here. So APS doesn't have the bandwidth to take 1,000 megawatts out of here. So the cost of us taking that to North Gila is $120 million. So that's what we were doing to go to California. But it's the same amount of money to go back to Phoenix. So we've got to get the rest of it financed, and then this comes into what can we sell power to Arizona for? Who's going to pay that $120 million? We're going to California and them? Are they going to split it? That's a business negotiation, but that was holding us up before. We don't have to worry about that now. The co-locator gets us away from that. We'll sell the rest of the power. We'll sell most of it to some resource, and some of it may go to Mexico. That's a very distinct possibility.
This question was asked previously, and I think there was a partial answer, is can the power be retrofitted for alternative technologies once the current model becomes obsolete, if it becomes obsolete?
Explain that to me again.
It says, can the tower be retrofitted for alternative technologies if the current model becomes obsolete?
I would say no. That no current technology I know of today.
Yeah.
This is the technology. I will tell you, though, that the tower can be dismantled and recycled. So, it's all concrete and rebar.
This is just this question between us. Will the solar wind tower cause any type of humidity in the community just because of the type of?
Nothing leaves the site.
What studies do you have that?
Well, let me add something to that, though.
Sure.
It's kind of interesting. The data center group. Data centers don't generally locate in deserts because of their electricity for cooling, right? Well, every place you have a data center where you're like in Phoenix, it's not a desert, but still hot, they have a real problem. The problem is you've got these stacks of computers in rooms, and then you've got your employees in the room next door, and they're monitoring, and they're feeding, and they're programming. Now, the air conditioning's feeding all of this, but the air conditioning system for the employees, it might be 75 degrees, but in the data center room where the computers are, it might be approaching 115 degrees, which is their limit. So this is a fine line of programming these cooling towers for that. Well, a huge solution for the data centers is the ability to have ambient air to level this out. Well, guess what? Today, right now, at 100 degrees, we'd be throwing off cold air coming out the tunnels at right around 68, 69 degrees. So about a month ago, when this issue came up, we introduced this to Georgia Tech, which is our aerospace. They're doing all the aerodynamics for us. And they said, absolutely no question, we can put some scoops on your tower, on your tunnels, behind the turbines, and we can channel this air over to the data center and give them that cold ambient air, which is a huge, huge advantage for them. So OSHA will not let an employee go from 75 degrees to 115. So this is a huge problem. So this is a solution for that as well. There's lots of little solutions that go with this that make sense. And and we're filing some patents on this. We got another patent last month. We're filing another patent right now. We're learning, little nuances that make it better as we go along.
What studies do you have that can be provided to the city for review? Water, the defense report, the economic impact, you provided some of that information. And can this be provided to the city under an NDA, something that we can have our experts be able to review?
I can give you the calculation for the water. It's not a study. It's just we have, I think you all know, we have proprietary algorithms for what it takes to fuel the tower. And what I gave you was the results of the program. I can't share the program with you because it's proprietary and it's not patentable. You can't patent algorithms. So that's, it's a product of 2 universities and Georgia Tech and everything else, but the basis of the algorithms is ours. I don't know what I could do to help you on that other than say, this is how much water I can help you with the data center, that's how much it takes. You take the to do the data center, you take the elevation here, your temperatures, and the pressure of the air. And that tells us how much cooling it takes, and how much water it takes to get there.
Here's some of my staff questions. Can you provide a financial estimate for impact fees associated with this project to ensure the feasibility of protecting the structure during a catastrophic event, fire, earthquake, or other, to ensure methodology to provide protection to the public structures and infrastructure?
To the public infrastructure?
To the public.
I'm not sure I know where that's going, so.
You want to enhance on that, Mary?
Mary, could you come to the microphone so that we can record?
Sorry to put you on the spot, Mary. Here, go ahead.
It was more in association with our infrastructure and the type of enhancements and impact based on the cost of your construction. I don't know what our impact calculation is. You know about that?
Elogio.
Yeah, I think impact fees would be calculated based on the approved study that we have, so I don't think we would have that information at this point.
I would say that the development agreement as proposed, we're paying for all the infrastructure. We're paying for the roads, all the roads in, during construction, after construction to support the whole facility. All the costs of the water we're paying for, and actually, we're going to try to figure out a way if we can use your gray water from your sewage treatment plant. We don't know if we can or not. That's very early. I don't have any studies on that. We're going to take a hard look at that because water is valuable. And if we can't, we've agreed to pay for an injection system for you to inject that effluent at no cost to you. So I don't know how we have any impact financial on the negative impact on the city at all.
Short answer, and I'd have to refer everybody to the impact fee study that we have on file, is that, remember, this is heavy industrial. It does not generate a single child who will use a park. It does not, you go through the list, heavy industrial is probably the least of the impacts versus, say, a residential development, et cetera. So you'd have to go to our study and look at those fees and fee calculations. In the agreement provides that at all times they will obey all state, federal, and local regulations. This would be one of our regulations.
Okay. But that's not to say that there would not be an
There's
impact
going to be an
fee.
impact fee.
Correct.
But it's whatever we've adopted for heavy industry, which is the lowest fee we got.
Okay.
And one other thing, because we're a renewable facility, a solar facility, there's a calculation done by your tax department, and this needs to be updated because it's about 3 years old right now, or however old it is. But there's $30 million that we pay to the local school systems from this, and it starts out at like $3.6 million a year, and it actually goes down to end up with that $30 million over a 30-year period. So then the data center, though, isn't under that umbrella. The data center will be a regular tax resource for you. That'll get taxed like any other facility here in San Luis. It's not a
Which
solar facility.
prompts me to another question. I'm not sure what kind of hazardous waste is produced at a data center. So we haven't had any studies regarding that either.
There's no hazardous waste at all. The data center is a clean facility. There depends on the type of backup generating system. As I mentioned, you could have some CO2 emissions. Or you could have NOx if you go with gas as opposed to diesel or whatnot. But there's no hazardous waste generator. They're computers. Now, when the computer gets old and they want to replace it, that's up to them to, dispose of that according to all the federal regulations and whatnot. But no, nothing comes, there's no garbage that's hazardous. The plates don't go in, there's nothing like that. There's
Okay.
nothing.
Which brings me to another question. I don't know what the lifespan is of your tower, but I don't know the shelf life of it. So that prompts the question, I'm sure it has a shelf life, but what happens when that shelf life has matured? Who is responsible for deconstructing the infrastructure?
Good question. Let's talk about the economic life of it first. First part of your question, we'll do part B second.
Okay.
A typical, like if you had a solar farm, they're about 20, 25 years, and then the solar panels are hazardous waste. You got to dispose of them. If you got a wind farm, same thing. They are 30-year life possibly, but those generators have toxic oil and things like that, so there are issues there. We don't have any of that in our facility. So the generators that we have are 30-year life generators. We have in our pro forma that we replace them every 10 years, but they're 30-year life facilities. They're typical, standard, sit on the ground generators, been running for years and years all over the world. Easy to maintain. Something happens, instead of having to climb a pole and work on it, a forklift, we disconnect the hydraulic drive and the electric harness, forklift lifts it up, takes it to the shop, puts a replacement in 20 minutes, and you're back in business again, and the shop repairs it. So those are things going on all the time on the day-to-day, which means this is not a 20 or 30 life facility. Now, architects, if you have your architectural engineering firm, you cannot get a life of more than 50 years on a building, on a structure that is concrete and rebar. Now, we have concrete and rebar buildings. I just read an article today where the Empire State Building is now 90-some years old. I think it was his 90th birthday this week or something. It's still standing there, but when you have rebar and concrete, nobody has X-ray vision and can see through the concrete to see how much moisture has been captured and how much potential rust deterioration has happened for the rebar, and what's the status, stability of the structure. So they call it 50 years. And so using that, you can say it's at least a 50-year life facility. Be more up to, the better answer to that is, how long will the value, the economic value, be there? Will somebody come up with something new that's better and cheaper and cleaner and makes it obsolete and replaces it? In our budget, and I think we made this in one of the statements earlier, and it's still there, we have $1 million a year reclamation fund set aside. So after the first 30 years, which is the length of the power purchase agreements, there's $30 million to take it down, and that's actually a profitable operation because it is all recyclable. So you sell the equipment that's in there, which you make money on, you take the thing down, and we have a large 640 acres there. Doesn't fall over on anybody, it just collapses, and then you recycle the concrete. So there's a $30 million budget there for that. And our lenders require that too. That's a requirement.
Yes. And this would be my last question, sorry, guys. Would the developer, meaning you, accept a partial commitment with conditions allowing staff to analyze the water availability for future growth?
So here's an issue here. There is no way to finance this project if the city has the right to terminate the water agreement or to reduce the water agreement. So everybody will understand if the whole city of San Luis runs out of water, okay, then that's just one of those natural events that nobody can do anything about. Nobody's going to make sure that the underground river keeps running. That's not the issue. But the issue would be, as I talked to Glenn and Kay last week, if you can arbitrarily say, ooh, we're going to stop water for the tower because we're going to build more houses. You know, if you put we would expect, as everyone would expect, that if there's an issue with the future water, you put a moratorium on future issuances of water permits, as opposed to strip the rights away from us to do that. So that's what the lender is going to require. And if you say, oh, 10 years from now, we want to build something else and cut your water off, if that's allowable, it doesn't fly.
Well, I think one of the conditions that was put in the development agreement was for us to keep 100-year assurances. And I think my question to the legal department was, you know, what happens in 20, 30 years and we ran out of water, or you're not able to meet that requirement? If I'm the developer and I'm putting $1 billion, you know, in this property, I would expect that the city would be liable to pay me back because of this investment, because no longer is my operations able to be conducted because of the water.
Jenny, it doesn't really work that way. It works
Okay,
works
explain it
the
to me,
way
please.
that the city is to maintain its 100-year capability,
Correct,
and you're monitoring that.
correct,
At some point, you're going to stop issuing water permits if that's in jeopardy.
correct.
That's different from taking water rights away from us so you can keep issuing permits. So you have a responsibility to protect your 100-year plan. And that's, if all of a sudden, here you are, and now your 100-year plan is in jeopardy, the first thing you do is some water conservation or whatever, I would think. I mean, I don't know, I can't speak to that. But that's what the lenders will look for. But the concept, which wasn't pretty clear, it's clear in the draft agreement now, or in the agreement tonight, that the water rights are in fact fixed, but it's subject to you maintaining your 100-year. So it's a condition. You have to, you know, it's subject to you doing that, and we have to trust you to do that. And if you were to, in the middle of it, say, hey, we're going to cut the tower off because we want to bring somebody else in here and they need that water, then yeah, then we'd have a problem.
So then you understand my position of making sure that we analyze our water demand so that, you know, we can serve the tower, but we can also serve residential, commercial, and industrial development in the next 50 years.
Yeah,
That's my take.
I think you're going to have to always be doing that. Now, we're not, you know, we're drilling separate wells. Of course, you know, I'm familiar with wells. I've drilled a lot of wells. And, you know, you put more wells you put in one aquifer, you have to measure that aquifer and, you know, what's coming out of that aquifer. And you would probably, different parts of the aquifer will affect it. This is a big aquifer down here. You can move a well a mile and it won't impact necessarily what's going on those 3 wells that are on that property now. So that's something that we would expect the city to be responsibly doing in terms of, you know, what they're taking out of the aquifer for their future development. The wells we'll be drilling will be for what our needs are in that aquifer now. And, you know, we're not here to disrupt your 100-year plan, but we think you have to figure out what your 100-year resources is, and I can't figure that out
We
for you.
want to make sure that we can continue to grow. So.
Right. But the agreement says that we certainly recognize that obligation you have to do that.
Sorry, guys.
Anybody else?
Polo Rivera, Director of Public Works. So, I mean, it's just really just teeing off on some of the responses we're given from Jenny's questions. Would you have anything on the study that shows that really the impact to the humidity or the air around the tower stays within the site?
Okay. Yes, I can pull something out for that. It's not even close. I mean, there's the cold, damp air it's down back to the ground, and this water, we're borrowing the water. That's another thing, Jenny. We're not using the water. We're borrowing it. We're putting it back in the aquifer. We don't use this water. We're borrowing it, and just like if we were irrigating an orchard, this we recapture 70% of the, 75% of the water that we use to hydrate the air. We capture that. What we can't recapture comes out in cold, damp air and goes right back into the ground. That cold air coming out of the tunnels sinks back into the ground, just like you were irrigating an orchard or lettuce or figs or whatever you're doing. So we met with the state. The state has no problem with that. When you build houses, hey, they're using your water and they're flushing it down the toilet. That's different from us. We're borrowing the water and putting it back in the ground.
So that's 70%, no, 30% that's not being recharged.
That is being recharged. That 30% is being charged back to the ground. The rest of it, we're just recirculating.
So the 30% that's being recharged, that's the 12,500
Yes, yes.
acre feet that you're needing.
That's the 11,000 for the tower. Now, the data center, it doesn't produce any gray water, but the cooling tower does have evaporation, and that water, what evaporates from the cooling tower, it doesn't sink directly into the ground into the cooling tower like ours does, because it's steam. It's kind of steamish. It's going to plume. It's going to go back into the ground. Some of it's going to evaporate. Mostly going to go back into the ground. But it's not like we are. Ours is going right back in the ground on the same site.
So if it's going back into the ground, I mean, that's roughly about 18 cubic feet per second. That's really what it adds up to.
Yeah.
That's about, I mean, we're familiar with irrigation canals in the area. I mean, that creates a pond pretty much on your side if it's that much going into the ground.
I never did so many, it's not 18 feet, acre feet per second. It's
No,
18.
it's cubic feet per
Cubic
second.
feet?
Yeah, most of our local channels here are about 20 cubic feet per second.
I'd have to, I'm sorry, I've never run that calculation.
It just seems like it's a lot of water, and it's going somewhere.
Well, I guarantee you, we could build a golf course, it's enough irrigation to grow grass and have a green, but that's not the intention.
And being familiar with the area, and this is more, that's why the inquiry about the study, being familiar with, we have fields around the city. When things are irrigated, you can feel the humidity. So that's really why the inquiry. But if something has been done, it would be good if it's shared with
Yeah,
staff.
the difference is, remember this air, like right now, it's it's less than 103 degrees right now, but it's 100 degrees out there right now. This air is coming out at 70 degrees.
Right.
So you're not getting that evaporation. You're not feeling the humidity. It's actually going to feel good. This is cooling the area.
Right, like
It's the opposite. Yeah, it's the opposite. It's like stepping out of your shower, a hot, steamy shower, and open the door and it's cold. It's the inverse.
Okay, yeah, that was really the only one I had.
Okay.
Mr. Gimbet, can you please get closer to the microphone?
In the agreement, we have provided that they will be building us an injection well at our wastewater treatment plant. Therefore, our gray water that we generate, instead of just evaporating, we can now inject it and help recharge that for that way. There are several cities in Maricopa County that do this. We will now join them.
Right, and just for clarification on this same water currently, actually goes to percolation ponds. So it really part of it gets percolated, otherwise a little bit gets evaporated.
Yeah,
So it'll help a little bit.
Yeah, that's not my idea.
Right.
We just agreed to do that.
Right,
We're going to try to see if we can use your wastewater.
Right.
Okay, I don't know the answer to that. We're driven by particulate size more than anything else, but if you've got some chemicals and whatnot in there,
Yeah,
that could be
Water
deteriorating
quality
to
is-
the turbines and whatnot, so we just don't have any data on that yet. But we're going to send a company in and take water samples of your water and your gray water and all that and see what that is and start a study on it. We've already agreed to do that. One of the people in my office is contacted with, maybe it was you, I don't know, somebody down here, and we're going to be doing that to move forward. I don't have any idea if we can use the gray water. We're going to try to. If we can't, we're going to pay for your injection well. I didn't come up with the injection well idea. That's what you wanted. We're going to pay for it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Good evening. Rich Jessup, Chief of Police. Pleasure to meet you. Several things that came to our mind as far as public safety was concerned, and also EMS and fire, is the serviceability that we're going to have to your facility. Number one, because you're an energy-regulated facility, if I'm correct, are you under any part of Department of Energy and/or Department of Defense security regulations that we need to know about?
No.
Okay, so that brings me to this. Because it's going to be an on-site, will you be providing your own private security company as far as in-house training? And will they be certified by the Department of Public Safety, who regulates the state of Arizona, for the training and ongoing training of those officers?
In the TEC meetings we had initially, we said we would be interfacing with both your enforcement and your health programs. So we will have EMTs on site as well, and we will make sure that we're all in sync with your departments on the training, the interfacing of our capabilities with your capabilities. I don't know whether your fire department has EMTs here or not, or whether you have a separate ambulance trucks that have EMTs, but we'll make sure that our safety program, that you all are aware of it, and that the types of accidents that we don't want to have them, but the type of accident we might anticipate, that the facility, the health facility we have, is set to accommodate that, and we're trained to be a first responder on that. And we did discuss all that, and I know it's been a long time, but
Yeah, and I just wanted to know, are your security officers going to be armed or unarmed?
I don't have the answer to that yet.
Okay.
Today's world, there's all kinds of security. We've got, cameras, and we've got detectors, and we have not looked at how we're going to do the security yet. We have a budget for a certain number of people for security and some rough budget for vehicles and whatnot. We know we're going to be active on the site. We're going to be rolling on the site. We're not just going to sit in a room someplace and look at cameras, but we really don't have that worked out yet. But
Okay.
we'll work with you guys on
Okay.
that.
Yeah, one of the questions that came up was the...
You'll have keys and all that.
And one of the questions that Chief and I were discussing too was the egress and ingress,
Yeah.
as far as coming in, as to, will it be fenced all the way around to where there's going to be central points of entrance into the facility?
there will be, yeah.
Should we need to be there and those
Yeah,
types of things
It'll
too?
be fenced, and I said you'll have keys. We're familiar with that. Whatever the codes are, whatnot, you'll have full access to our ingress and egress points.
Okay. In the event, is there anything that we have to be aware of on an evacuation plan of the facility and the data center that we would need to go to an emergency operations center or anything of that nature?
Chief, I'd have to yield to the final operators of the data center, because I'm not a data center guy, and I don't know what they do in there. So they're huge companies, and they conform with every regulation you can think of, and some you haven't thought of. But they'll interface with you on that. Again, that's kind of a separate operation from us.
Okay.
But a data center that is going to be paying, $65 million a year for electricity and $1.2 billion to build it, they're going to do it right. They're not. There's only a number that I can count on my hand that qualify for that, and you'll be very happy with the data center company.
Okay.
We can't disclose that right now, because actually we haven't made a final decision. There's several things going on with them right now. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure that once everything gets developed as far as
But
security
they're all
protocols
big.
and
They're
those
all
things.
big. They're all.
Yeah, we'll
they're all
sit down.
big, yeah.
Terrific. That's mine. Thank you.
Hello, Jose Guzman, Director of Planning and Zoning. So just received, we're processing an application for general plan amendment to change about 430 acres from industrial to residential. Yes, West Avenue D, which probably be about 2,000 homes. If this amendment gets approved, how will this impact the project, and what impact will the project have to those 2,000 residents just across the street from this project? And do you think this is compatible to be next door? And what measures will be taken to buffer any incompatible uses?
Yeah, respectfully, I really don't feel it's my place to comment on the wisdom of the planning or the city council and how they want to develop the city. I just hope that if we're moving forward with this, that you'll take into consideration what this is and consider what you approve around it. And certainly, I would hope that whatever is going to go around it will be aware of what this is. So if you're going to move into a house next door, you should probably understand that you might not see the sun the same time everybody else does for certain people in the neighborhood. So, but again, I really am not here to debate your wisdom on any of your other projects or whatever. I'm concerned about mine, and the infrastructure that we put in to get there will be, I think, more than adequate. Actually, we'll overbuild it because once we finish the construction, the base for getting the construction in and out is far greater than you'll ever need for any other support systems in there. But respectfully, I don't mean to be coy
Yeah,
about it,
I
but
just wanted
that's just not my business. You know.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was on record so we can add it to the report whenever we do that.
Good evening, Councilmember Luis Cabrera. Ron, I have a question regarding the 100-year commitment. So it is to my understanding there isn't an analysis done to determine if we're gonna be able to continue growing at the rate we're growing and provide you this water? Or has that been determined? Has there been an analysis done that we can continue growing as a city and still provide you this amount of water?
The short answer is a true professional analysis is no. However, you gotta also understand that at the time we did our hydrological study for our 100-year assured supply designation, this land and the square mile next to it, plus another half square mile to the north of it, was being farmed in citrus. That 2.5 square miles of land used far more water than this amount. And we still had over 8,000 acre feet per year available for our 100-year assured supply designation, and we're only using about 3,400 of that 8,000 some odd acre feet. So in theory, if you were to say that we got no more water than was what was designated in that 100-year assured supply designation and that original hydrological study, we could double in size and still not hit that amount. So if you will, if you consider that, if you just viewed this tower as trading the water that was being pumped for citrus for water for the tower, we haven't really changed anything.
So the 100-year analysis or the 100-year adequate water supply is based on our current usage today, or how are we basing those 100 years?
Yes, so in 2010, there was some consultants assisted the city in getting an assured water supply. And the assured water supply it says your 100-year assured water supply, but it doesn't really give you that designation for 100 years. They said you have to really revisit if you're reaching, I think it's a little bit over the 8,000 acre feet per year, or you have to revisit, I believe, by 2030, and you have to apply a few years before that to get it, to keep the designation for another, who knows, 10 years, 20 years. We're not sure what extensions does the ADWR offer, but that would be sort of what the city needs to do. In the event that we start also approaching the limit on the acre feet, we would have to also reapply and revisit that, our groundwater to see where we're at. In the event that we move forward with this project, we definitely have to make sure we apply again and go through the steps to keep the 100-year assured water supply designation. And we haven't done that. Without this project, we're fine, but we would have to go back around 2028 or so. I think that's when we have to go back and do it. But with this, I mean, or any other large project, we would have to revisit that before then.
Can they deny the allocation of more water?
I'm sorry.
Can they deny the allocation of more water?
No, I think the water, we should be fine, but it's really, we would have to try and keep that designation. In the event that we lose that designation, what happens is we really have to prove that we have enough water as developments come in individually. Right now, if a developer comes in and applies for a project, they know that the city has and can offer water for them because we have this designation until we reach the limit established by the designation. If we were to lose that designation, every project needs to be applied individually. Has to be a little hydrologic study submitted to the ADWR and wait for their approval before it continues.
So, Mr. Pickett, if you are recycling water, are you still going to be consuming the same amount of water every year, or
Yeah,
how does that
yes.
recycling of water work?
All right. The water that we initially charge the tower with, when the evaporative process takes place, we recapture that water. It's all inside the tower. We recapture that water, it goes back to our holding ponds, then we filter it and recycle it again in the tower. 30%, 26%, 25%, depends on the day. Actually, depends on how hot it is outside, how cold it is. You know, it's a different varying amounts of water. It takes a whole year to run the averages, but on the averages, it runs 25 to 30% that is discharged in the form of cold, damp air, comes out the tunnels and sinks back into the ground just like an irrigation system. So we're not using the water. It's not like a house, or it's not like a hospital, or it's not like, you know, people flushing toilets. And we'll have a couple toilets in there for our employees, but that's on your regular system. We're buying that water separately and paying the sewage treatment facility. You know, that's a separate contract with the city for the potable water and the sanitary. Same with the data center. So, I mean, frankly, I mean, I'm pretty simplistic about it. I would think that, you know, the data center, drinking water and gray water is more of an impact on your 100-year supply than our tower is. We're recharging the groundwater. I mean, this isn't an industrial facility that takes water and uses a vast amount of water and then has to find a river to dump it into after it cleans it or something. You know, this isn't like water from a power plant that, you know, you've got these mega holding ponds that are full of chemicals and stuff. This is nothing like that. We don't have any of that. This is just cold, damp air coming out the tunnels and sinking back into the ground. There is a certain amount of evaporation. Okay, when that cold, damp air, I can't tell you 100% of that goes back into the ground because there's always some evaporation that won't make it that far. And it may come down as a thunderstorm in Texas someplace. I really don't know. That's immeasurable. But it's less. I guarantee it's less than if we were chopping lettuce and taking lettuce to market. There'd be more water in that lettuce head than is going to evaporate from our discharge. The same would be true of an orchard. And whatever you're growing in that orchard, more water is going to go to market for that fruit than we're going to lose in evaporation.
So it seems like more you would be utilizing close to 4,000 square feet for water on a yearly basis because the water that's not recycled, or?
It's 11,000 acre feet. That's recycled. That's the recycled amount. That's what goes back in, that's what we're taking out and putting back. It's the recharge. It's not the recharge, excuse me, it's the net use that gets charged into the ground. It's not what we recirculate. Recirculate 3 times that, 4 times that sometimes.
You
Actually,
also
6
mentioned the school systems getting money through this project.
The school systems get $30 million over 30 years, 3.6 million the first year, and that's probably going to get updated. Probably has increased a little bit. That's a 4-year-old calculation.
And then that, just for the record, because we are zoned, this is gonna take place in Avenue E, or on the east side of town, that money wouldn't come to the school systems in San Luis, they would go to Somerton, right? Okay.
The state of Arizona passed a special bill regarding property taxes and power generating plants. And this is because in northeastern Arizona, you had that huge coal-fired plant that paid for Eager, for example, to have an indoor domed football stadium just for their high school team. Well, basically now the law is the state of Arizona gets that property taxes and they spread it throughout the state. It doesn't go toward the local school districts anymore, not for a power plant. I didn't write that law, I didn't make that law, the legislature did.
We went in to find out what our tax bill was going to be and found that out. That's how we found out about it.
Thank you, Glenn. Another of the questions is, could the agreement be for less time than the 50 years? Or it has to be done, why the 50-year mark?
Well, it has to do with the life cycle of the plant by design, and the power purchasers and the data center, they'll be signing up for 20 to 30 years in the first tranche with extensions. You know, they don't want to put $1 billion in the ground and say there's a finite, especially when they're leasing it, that there's a time where they have to leave. So in negotiations with them, rather than they own it forever, 50 years became the mark. Now, it was 50 years to start with because of the life cycle of the plant, you know, the tower. But now we've got other issues with tenants there that don't want to just walk away from a $1 billion facility in 30 years.
No, that's it. It's just curious to see the 50-year, because we're growing and growing population here in San Luis, and not just San Luis, the entire world is growing. We're projected to be at 9.9 billion people in the world, and I see water as a valuable resource for life. And 50 years, I mean, that's gonna be my grandkids who will be around. I hope I'm around by that time still, but I mean, it is a lot of time and it is a lot of water, but we'll see. I have no further questions. Thank you, Ron.
Okay.
Okay, I'm Jose Ponce, council member. I'm gonna be kind of short because we're running out of time. My first question is actually the same thing, the water. I'm concerned about the water. I think the tower is gonna be using lots of water. I mean, and from what I hear, one of the wells, if I believe it's number 7, it dropped 10 feet in the last 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. See? So, see, that's my main concern. We're losing a lot of water. And remember that the aquifers table, we shared this with San Luis, Mexico. So both cities, I mean, are growing. So we want to require more water every year. So that's my main concern. And,
I fully appreciate, understand your concern. I just keep reiterating that you keep building more houses, which is in your wisdom to do, you're gonna keep draining those wells down because they're not putting any water back in the ground. So it's, I mean, we're returning the water to the aquifer. The other developments aren't. I mean, look, I'm not saying you don't need another Walmart or hotels or whatever, but they're gonna drain your water, so they're gonna use your water. The more commercial development and housing you have, mostly housing, you know, you're going to use that 300 gallons, 400 gallons a day per house, and you're not getting any of that back. That's where the drain on the wells is coming from. It's not going to come from my project. That's why I was saying to Jenny earlier, the city needs to watch its 100-year supply. We want you to watch your 100-year allocation, and you know, we don't think we're impacting that, but we certainly don't want all of a sudden you ran out of water, and it wasn't our fault, and now we're out of business. You know, that's the concern. We don't think we contribute to you running out of water. So we don't want you to run out of water, obviously. But I don't know how to answer that any other way.
and another thing, sir, I don't see any data that will support, I mean, the effectiveness of this project, you know. I don't see any, have you built one of them someplace in the U.S.?
Is there, I'm sorry,
There's any tower like this one in the U.S.?
is there any tower like this?
Yeah.
No, this will be the first tower.
This
We
one-
did a,
See, this is what I'm saying. I mean, we don't have data that will support, I mean, that they want to prove this going to work.
right,
See?
well.
So that's one of my concerns. That's myself, I mean, that's my main concern.
I understand. I mean, our data is built on really just academics. You know, we've got University of Oklahoma, Penn State, Georgia Tech. You know, they did all these studies. That's what they say it is. We accept that. These are not, these are algorithms. If you take, see if I can do this. If you take amount of air, you know, a cubic, whatever, of air, and get a little technical, it has to be at a certain pressure, you get the temperature and the RH, relative humidity. So you're going to inject these molecules of water in at different size droplets and saturate it. You can't stop the evaporative process against the ambient conditions. And you can absolutely predict exactly how long it's going to take and what the speeds are going to be for that to happen. They're straight algorithm programs. Nobody made this up. This is just science. It is pure science. You can't stop the process. So in terms of how much water it takes, it's just pure science. It's predictable. Now, when I got into this, did I know that? No. But when the person who did the original programming for us is the same guy who invented Doppler radar. He was at the University of Oklahoma. He was head cloud scientist for that school, which is the premier place in the world because of all the tornadoes they get and the cloud problems they have. Cloud science is studying this whole atmospheric condition. So Doppler radar is measuring the density of the air, which is how much water's in it. The two different radars colliding and measuring those little molecules. Well, the algorithms inside our tower are those programs. Our program, every meter across and every meter down is a data point. And we calculate the amount of water, temperature, and initial RH, and temperature in, temperature out, and RH. And we monitor that across the tower and down the tower every meter in a program. And I can tell you when you get to about 1,600 feet, you hit an inflection point, and the rest of it's condensed. And that's where we got our water measurements. But it's not, it's just pure science. It's not, I didn't invent it. You know, we went to the schools, and this is their programs. I mean, this is what it is. I can't do anything about it. You can't stop it. You couldn't stop this. Nothing will stop it. It's Mother Nature at work.
Yeah, okay. And this is for Mr. Gimbut. Seeing the size of this project, Mr. Gimbut, it would have been nice to have would it be nice to have this meeting open to the public, to have some people from our city, some residents, I mean, for them to make their comments, concerns?
The answer, short one, is that 6, 7 years ago, we had a series of those meetings, and indeed, we filled the cultural center with the crowd.
I remember.
And we can probably set something up like that again, not a problem. The headache that Ron has is that he really can't delay the consideration of this agreement and put it off. It's that critical. So if you're going to put it off, that kills this thing deader than a doornail, to be blunt. If you pass it, it probably would be a very good thing to schedule in a month or two, when we can organize it with Ron's schedule, et cetera, another complete public presentation, another complete place where the public's invited to ask their questions and do that all over again.
All right.
We could do that. I went to, not only the center, I went to a couple of churches. We spent, I bet we've had, all in all, 15 public hearings on this. And there's not been any opposition at the public hearings. We had one guy one time who moved here from Michigan, and somebody was building a plant next door to him and stopped building it halfway, and he was upset that we start building it and stop building it. That's the only person who's ever objected to it from the public side. But we're talking today. My wife's been to every meeting with me. I was sorry I missed the one 2 weeks ago. I was happy, frankly, with what it takes to get here to be able not to, because, we're up at, 5 this morning and, get home to 11 o'clock tomorrow night. But I want to be here. I want this to happen here in San Luis. I want to see the people get their jobs. I want to see the economic development that comes from this. And I want this to be the model to sell it other places. I mean, this is going to be a global solution, and we want it to be here. But it's time to go with it, and frankly, it was my mess up. I called the city a month ago or so. I frankly had not realized that the development agreement had expired. I just thought we needed more water. So it's back to the whole thing. But we've had beaucoup public meetings and open to the public, and every hearing's been open to the public, and this is the first one that I've ever been to here, which wasn't completely open to all the public at a regularly scheduled meeting. I consider this a work session, and I think one later was. It was never our intention not to be public about this at all. I mean, we didn't answer every question every time in every meeting, and it is what it is. We do have more answers now than we had before. It's evolved, but it's time to go with this if we're going to go here.
Good. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Ponce, we are streaming to the public, so they are able to listen.
I'm sorry.
We are live streaming to the public, so they're able to listen.
Thank you, Kay.
Okay, I got calls from 2 weeks ago, people listening to it.
Oh,
I got
that's
calls from
good.
people I didn't know who found me and said, hey, this is a great idea, this data center. These are your citizens finding me someplace in North Carolina saying, I like this idea. But that was just from that. We didn't do any publicity on it.
Please feel free to sit down, Mr. Pickett. Feel free to sit down. You've been standing for a long time. Did you have anything else, Mr. Ponce?
No. Thank you.
We're 9 minutes from the special meeting. Was there any other questions for Mr. Pickett? Elogio?
Yeah, this is more for information on our end. From your analysis and maybe planning for future, what other type of businesses that you think or expect might be attracted to the area based on obviously the power supply and, you know, the savings on it because there's no distribution? I mean, you'll be right next door to the generation.
The other businesses, but you saw on the site plan,
Yes.
we have what's called an eco park adjacent to the data center. We don't have any specific tenants lined up or in discussions or whatever, but until I figure out how much power APS might or might not want, how much power Mexico might or might not want, which we plan to offer that first to them. Then the balance of the power that we have, we are going to look for local tenants on site who need power in our peak production times, which is afternoons and daytimes. We need any more, I can't handle any more 24/7 tenants like the data center, because we have during the wintertime and the night hours after, especially 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, our power goes down below what the data center needs, so we'll have to be bringing on some backup power. So I can't take on any more support for that. So it's got to be clients that need it. So maybe some want to make bicycles and have green energy, so they can say their bicycles or electric bikes are green. I don't know. There's all kinds of companies out there that want to be green. You know, this can be a green city. You know, it's not important to a lot of people. It's important to me, but this can be truly, if it weren't for how complicated it is, I mean, it wouldn't take much of our power to power all of San Luis.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Come, microphone.
Your project sounds wonderful. Your project sounds wonderful, innovative, and all. I think the biggest observation I've made over the last week is that the city is struggling with the 50-year request. And with that, I'm not sure, since your statement was that your leases will feasibly be 20 to 30 years with extensions, that might be a more appropriate request as far as water usage goes.
How can I guarantee them extensions if I don't know I have it available? I can tell you if I don't get the extension, you have it back. I don't need it then.
Just 50 years is a very long time. It's a very big commitment.
I know, it's, I understand that, but again, we're not really using your water. We're taking it out of the ground, using it right, borrowing it and putting it back. So if you run out of water or start impacting your supply, it's because of other things you're doing, not the tower. It's other development you're bringing in that's using the water and creating sewerage out of it. We're not doing that.
Well, in 4 years, the city will most likely need to conduct another hydrologic study. And that would be probably more comfortable. Not that we want you to wait 4 years, but I just think it may be more reasonable to ask for possibly 25 years of water guarantee with extensions before any of your other tenants sunset, their contracts. So you'd be able to guarantee your extensions to those clients. Just a consideration.
I thank you. It's very difficult.
Ron, I think what Mary's trying to say is that, it is a big commitment for the city. And from our point of view is, we want to have the tower because it's going to create jobs, but those jobs need homes to live in. Those people need places to eat. Those people need places to shop. So I think having a balance, community, that's probably where we stand in making sure that, do I want additional industrial? Yes, I do, because I can't live with 300 jobs only. I need to be able to create jobs from other industries, not just one industry or one project.
Right.
So
But-
that's where she's coming
And Jenny,
from.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm missing something, that those people that we hire and have those jobs and have a place to live and want to go out to eat and whatever, yeah, it's going to take some water for their houses and some water for those restaurants, but we're not taking away that water. We're providing the need for that water, so.
And I understand, you
So,
taking the water, pumping it down,
Right,
coming
right,
up, reusing it. It's just that it's a huge amount
Right,
of
but-
water, so I need to be able, for me, I need to be able to know that this project, along with all the other industrial, commercial, and residential, will be able to be viable in
Right.
50 years.
I
So, that's
understand,
just-
I really understand where you're coming from, but if, I think it's just a matter of what are the benefits, and you're weighing it against benefits from some other project that might come in that you don't know about, that, I don't know who's gonna just recycle the water and put it back in the ground. Other industrial projects are gonna use the water, and it's gonna be gone. And we need for you and the city and its wisdom to manage its water. That was a conversation with Glenn. I mean, you have a responsibility. I get that. But I'm not using your water up,
We're just using a large amount.
Well, we're recycling a large amount. We're not using it, but then how can I don't know how to answer the question. If we bring too much business to San Luis and you have to build more infrastructure and houses and shopping centers because of what we bring here, that you have to cut me off because you got to take care of those people that are coming here to work. I mean, it's a dichotomy. I mean, it doesn't.
I think you balance it out. That's what
That's what we're trying.
to do.
Trying to do, but
Yeah.
trying to balance it out by not using your water. I'm using it, but I'm borrowing it, putting it back. It's different from using it. So, but I get it. I mean, I
Yeah.
do get it. But again, I think ultimately, you need to do a hydrologic study. You need to figure out where you're going to drill these wells. You don't just stick holes in the ground, because where you stick the holes in does impact how much the drawdown is and whatnot. I've drilled a lot of wells, and I've built a lot of communities where I did my own water system. I owned a public utility company, so I'm familiar with water and sewer. I built a sewage treatment plant discharged into the Potomac River in the United States. You can imagine what that was like to get that permit. So I understand water systems, sewer systems, and what happens there, but we're not that. We're not that.
And I think that analysis of the water is not just because of the tower, it's because of other infrastructure, other industrial developments that have raised an interest in coming to San Luis, because we do have that resource. And so previously in a different project, it was the same similar request. And I think our staff is at a position where we should be doing this analysis to be able to tell our council, you know what? Yes, we could do this project and this development and this commercial, and this is what we could do for the next X amount of years. And that's on us to be able to do it, just so that we can address their concerns.
Right. Well, I was planning to try to bring some more industry here because they want green electricity. I see that industry as, needing drinking water and flushing toilets, not big water users. But You know, if you want to put some caveat on, I don't even know how to phrase that. I mean, what,
That's what I'm having trouble with.
yeah. I mean, you've got lots of other land in San Luis, I guess. I'm not really familiar with all the different zonings and what you're doing. I see a lot of houses being built. I mean, today I saw more houses. And last time I was here was nighttime, and I didn't get to see all the new houses that are out there. And there's a medical center being built out there and whatnot. So I see that's growth, and I'm glad that's here. I'm really happy for San Luis to have all this. I want to support that. I want to bring more growth. But I don't know, I don't see how I can manage your water, because, you know.
No, I think we understand each
But
other.
I want you to. I don't,
Yeah,
wanna- I
yeah, we
don't
understand
want you to run out of water for me. You know,
Yeah,
that would be a death knell. That would
Just
be-
wanted to clarify.
Right.
No, and I think that was a great observation, Mary. Thank you, and thank you, Jenny. Because, I mean, Mr. Pickett, we aren't a retiring city. I think we're blooming more than ever before. So it is important to have a good balance to be able to offer commercial, residential, industrial. And I think that without this study, we're tying our hands to just one project until we have the study done, because otherwise we don't know if we're going to be able to continue growing. And like you said, yes, it's going to develop employment, but where are we going to house these people? Where are they going to shop? Where are they, basically, where are they going to live? So we want to make sure that we're able to provide homes for all these employments, because, I mean, we're growing, and just in the past 5 years, I mean, our growth rate has been tremendously high. Every year there's more home permits issued, so I think it's something important to consider. But I like the way you and Jenny were having this conversation, because that is our main concern, that what are we going to do if we run out of water? And I know we do have the special meeting scheduled to be started at 6:30, so if there's no other questions, then, okay, can we adjourn this meeting and get the special meeting started?
Yes, there was just one item on the agenda, so if we've come to the end of the agenda, we can just adjourn. We don't need a quorum to do a motion or anything.
Thank you.
So Melissa's ending this meeting.
Okay, can I put some on the record before you close the meeting?
Oh, are you able to go back on? No?
No? Okay. When we start the meeting, I'll be happy to do that.
You could do that in the special meeting.